This session is titled Adaptive and Ethical Engagement with Communities, Best Practices in Design Pedagogy, and features two incredible speakers who are going to talk a little bit about some of their projects with students. This session focuses on the value of and lessons learned from taking students into communities to co-create solutions to local problems. One of the things that we wanted to highlight is that students come to college with a whole range of perspectives and ways of thinking about how to solve problems. Sometimes those problem-solving strategies are not grounded in ethical, co-creative mindsets. Sometimes they're grounded in, I know what's best, right? And I'm going to impose these ideas on others. Another way of thinking about it is from a perspective of a technical versus an adaptive challenge. If students come to college thinking that they can solve problems in the same way that a mechanic diagnoses a problem with a car, they're probably not engaging with their communities in the most mutually beneficial partnerships. We can think of some ways of problem solving as a technical approach. These types of problems can be solved by applying what we already know to an issue. The transmission in my car is broken. We know to replace the transmission. But not all problems are solved quite so easily. Sometimes it's not just the transmission. Maybe it's the way that I'm driving the car that's causing the problem. And if the mechanic never talks to me about it, the mechanic won't fix the problem effectively. Mechanics probably aren't going to try to ask me questions, right? Because they're going to assume that I'm not an expert. And when we make that assumption, we often miss out on a lot of valuable expertise in our communities. And so one of the things that's going to be really wonderful in what Mandy and Alyssa present today is their efforts to ensure that they are connecting with community members and drawing on their expertise for local problem solving. So when working with people in organizations that function within communities, we need to think about a more adaptive approach to problem solving, thinking about how we can use our open mind and design thinking strategies to keep the end user or community member in mind. And so today we're going to turn it over to our two presenters who will share a little bit about what their work has looked like working alongside community members to conduct needs assessments and support innovation, how their work is connected to forming ethical partnerships with community stakeholders, and thinking about how design pedagogy can help educators support student change makers as they develop as leaders, moving from that technical approach to problem solving to a more adaptive approach. Mandy and Alyssa have prepared 15-ish minutes for their presentations. And then because we're in this Zoom platform, we're going to take full advantage, I hope, of people unmuting and sharing their own questions or maybe responding to some of the questions that we have ready for you all. I'll pose just one of the questions now so that you can kind of have it in mind. And I'll also post it in the chat so that you have it to look back on. But the question is, how might you help students move from problem solving from a technical mindset to an adaptive mindset? And so Mandy and Alyssa are going to address this question in their presentations, but you might also think about it from your own lens where you work. So I will turn it over to Mandy. If folks have questions during the session, I'll monitor the chat so you can go ahead and post those questions there, and we'll make sure that we provide time and space for those. Mandy?
Thank you so much. Apologies for the little technical glitch. I want you to know that we arranged that in particular just to illustrate our point. So thank you for indulging us with that little experiment. Thank you too for having me here. This is my favorite conference out of the whole year, and I will sorely miss it. when it goes away, and I hope we figure out some way to reinvent it in the future. I'm speaking to you from La Jolla, California, which is was the ancient home of the Lusania people. I'm a social scientist teaching in a school of engineering. My students come from all majors, but since the programs I direct focus on social innovation, a significant number of engineering and technology students are involved. Over the years, looking through my social science lens, I've come to realize that there's a glitch in the way in which they have often been trained to approach problem solving with communities. This presentation will describe that glitch, outline what I believe is a more ethical and effective way of engaging with communities, and through the use of a case study, illustrate the approach in action. I will also draw heavily on the work of Joseph Heifetz and his colleagues at Harvard. Abraham Maslow, another psychologist, once said, and I'm paraphrasing, "If your only tool is a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail." We all know how vitally important the process of problem definition is to the practice of social innovation. Students must gain a full, accurate, and compassionate understanding of the problem before they can help communities to address it. They must immerse themselves in two alternating and iterative practices, diagnosis and action. Their objective, whether they realize it or not, is not focused on product development, coming up with the next big thing that will create sweeping change in a community. Social change is more often a long, hard, incremental process that is frequently met with resistance. The glitch I observed in my work with students and with others was the tendency to treat adaptive challenges as though they were technical problems. Oh, hold on a second, we don't seem to be. There we go. It is easy to see how this can occur. Of the two, technical problems are so much more straightforward and less vexing than adaptive challenges, even though the one we just had was pretty vexing. And that is just one of the differences. Technical problems can be very complex and vitally important, but they have known solutions that can be implemented through the application of expertise. For instance, my sister-in-law just underwent knee replacement surgery. While the human knee is a terribly complicated joint, this has become a relatively routine procedure in the developed world, regularly taught in medical schools and on surgery rotations. Most technical problems can be addressed by implementing known solutions, such as Zoom, with the requisite expertise, without changing the community's existing structures and ways of doing things. Adaptive challenges, on the other hand, can only be addressed through changes in the community's values, beliefs, relationships, loyalties, and customary way of doing things. They do not have known solutions and require more than the application of expertise. Making progress on an adaptive challenge entails mobilizing the community, or more precisely, helping the community to mobilize itself to identify a problem, let go of the old and embrace the new, tolerate losses, and generate the capacity to thrive. The global COVID-19 pandemic is probably one of the most current and dramatic examples of an adaptive challenges. Communities around the world are experiencing significant disruptions and being asked to try new behaviors. For instance, wearing masks and practicing social distancing and getting a new vaccination. These changes create discomfort and can generate resistance, as all of us have witnessed. There are few problems that are purely technical or adaptive. Most problems come mixed with both adaptive and technical elements. Many technical problems are the tip of the iceberg. Lurking below the surface may be an adaptive challenge. For instance, here in Southern California, we implement rolling blackouts during heat waves when the load on the power grid threatens to become too taxing. But the heat waves themselves are increasing in frequency and duration and becoming more extreme as a function of the adaptive challenge of climate change. Let's consider social innovation as adaptive work. We encourage students to view their role as creative partners and their objective as helping a community to mobilize itself to make progress on an adaptive challenge. Successful innovations help communities to take the best from their past into the future. In this way, local cultures, norms, and customs that are essential to their identity are honored and preserved. Indeed, they form the foundation for the adaptive change. Social change typically involves both conservation and progression. Discomfort is a necessary precondition for change. But too much discomfort leads to defensiveness and a slowdown or shutdown of progress. Heifetz and his colleagues describe a productive zone of equilibrium. This occurs between the lower and upper limits of a community's tolerance for change. And this is where the work takes place. Students must learn to tolerate and manage discomfort, both the community's and their own, without foreclosing on the work. As you can see from this diagram, approaches to technical problems and adaptive challenges are vastly different. In a technical problem, disequilibrium typically starts high and then lessens in a relatively linear fashion with efforts to resolve the problem. For instance, you are injured in a car accident, but you begin to experience relief as soon as help arrives. There may be some bumps on the road to recovery, but generally, disequilibrium decreases until you are restored to good health. With an adaptive challenge, disequilibrium usually starts low and then builds to a point where the discomfort in not dealing with the problem is greater than the discomfort associated with addressing the problem. Things have reached a tipping point. The process is also a great deal less linear than it is for technical problems. This is a function of the dynamic nature of adaptive challenges. There is no single, clear, known path to the resolution of adaptive challenges, and there are multiple potential outcomes. It often feels like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We ask students to engage in a 5-step process as they approach adaptive work with communities. First and foremost, they meet the community where they are, physically and psychologically. This involves immersion, observation, interaction, and data collection. You cannot help to mobilize people you do not know. Effective social innovation requires interaction and iteration. It must be rooted in mutual empathy and respect, relationship, and partnership. This is the necessary foundation for all the other steps. Second, we ask them to co-create hypotheses. This involves diagnosis and problem definition. Diagnosis and problem definition are a bit like exercise. It's not a one and done proposition. Adaptive work relies on iteration, experimentation, and a commitment to continuous improvement. Students often want to solve problems quickly and move into action prematurely. They get ahead of their community partners and then are disappointed when their innovation or intervention is not adopted. But the process of diagnosis should not be shortchanged and should be frequently revisited even after action has begun. We encourage students to periodically view the situation from a metaphorical mountaintop so that they can achieve some distance from the details and gain perspective. This can serve to provide clarity. Climbing the mountaintop is also useful when students become so involved in their work that their investment begins to cloud their vision or eclipse the interests of their community partners and other stakeholders. They should not become so wedded to a potential solution that they develop tunnel vision, not able to see past it to other, better possibilities. Next, we ask them to work with the community to co-design experiments where they can test potential solutions. It is essential to involve the community in the design of experiments. This is the crucial difference between providing a service and true collaboration. Students need to learn to work with communities, not design interventions for them. Communities are partners, not clients. They are investors in the project, not merely volunteers or participants. Next, and this is actually the simplest step, although sometimes takes a long time due to trial and error, they co-implement experiments. And then together with the community, they co-evaluate the results and interpret the findings. Community partnership is crucial here as well. Sometimes students may be satisfied with the result, but the community is not and lacks the commitment to sustain the innovation. Other times, the community may be delighted, but the students foresee problems ahead if the innovation is adopted. Perhaps it will become obsolete in a short period of time or will be too costly to maintain. The students in the community need to come to a common understanding of the experimental outcomes and use these to guide the next iteration of experimentation. And then we return to number one. The community and the students will be in a different place just by virtue of completing this cycle. Iteration necessarily begins with a new assessment. We expect a lot from the communities with which we partner, as well as from our students. They must be able to tolerate the trial and error that is an inevitable part of the process. We want them to feel challenged and engaged, but not exploited. This is what communities and students need to understand about adaptive work. It takes time. There are no quick fixes or off-the-shelf solutions. It takes commitment, resilience, and persistence, what Carol Dweck has described as a growth mindset. There will be losses and failures along the way, and students and community members need to be able to recover from them without foreclosing on the process. It requires diversity. There need to be multiple perspectives integrated into each step of the process. If you are doing it alone or only with others who look and think like you are not doing it right. Finally, it takes courage and humility. This is not about a grand vision or the next big thing. It is about transforming a community through small, hard-won, incremental steps. Let's take a look at adaptive work in action. In 2015, an interdisciplinary team of UC San Diego Global Tie students designed, built, tested, and installed a solar-powered street lamp in a rural village in the Philippines in partnership with Gawa Kalinga, a poverty reduction NGO. While this lit up a small corner of a single village, it was not reflective of adaptive work. The students had addressed a technical problem, provided a service to a community, but had not truly partnered with them. Had they immersed themselves in the community and co-created possible solutions, they would have discovered that the community lacked the capacity to replicate or maintain the street lamp. This compelled the students to re-examine the problem they were trying to address. They reframed the problem as an adaptive challenge that went well beyond a small corner of a single village. They realized that the problem was more complex, that it involved not only the need for lighting, but the need for economic development. It would require new learning and partnership with the people most affected. In 2016, the students returned to the village, this time focused on learning. They interviewed a representative from nearly every household. They partnered with a subset of villagers to co-design a portable solar lantern that could be easily constructed by the villagers themselves. In partnership with the village, they have undertaken multiple iterations of the design. They have returned twice to the village to co-lead training workshops to test the ease with which villagers can fabricate the lanterns. In the interim, they regularly communicate with the village via WhatsApp, Skype, and Messenger. The students are working with the villagers now to co-create a village-owned and operated social enterprise to manufacture and sell the lanterns, the benefits of which will accrue to a community development fund for the village. And they are also exploring the way in which the village has been impacted by COVID-19. During this process, they discovered that the village was without power for approximately 3 weeks due to a recent typhoon. So the students have been collaborating long distance with the village to co-design a solar cow, a cart on wheels, to charge multiple mobile phones during typhoon-driven power outages. They care about the village, not as an object of study and experimentation, but as their partners. They have come to know and respect many of the villagers, have listened to them, share their hopes and dreams for themselves and their children. As you can see, this has been a slow process, But as the proverb goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's better together. Thank you. I don't know if we're taking questions now, or in the interest of time, we should move to Alyssa and whatever you want to do.
I think if there are questions, right, I would love for people to go ahead and put them in the chat. I know sometimes with Zoom, it takes me a minute to kind of gather my thoughts before I'm ready to pose a question. And there's a lot of really wonderful information that Mandy shared. So if anyone does have a question right off the top of their heads and wants to unmute, you're very welcome to do that. And if not, then we can still have questions populating in the chat. One question that I will pop in the chat right now, just for folks to kind of keep in mind, is again, how might we help our students move from problem solving from a technical mindset to an adaptive mindset? Mandy just gave us a wonderful example. Mandy, Sebastian asked in the chat, will the presentation you gave be made available?
Absolutely. I will make sure that Ashoka has the slides.
Great, thank you. So please continue popping questions in the chat, and then we will go ahead and or Sebastian, I see you popped on video there. Did you want to ask a question live? No?
Yep, don't have a question right now, but I may jump in at some point.
Wonderful, thank you. So Alyssa, do you want to go ahead and share?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you so much, Anne. And it's just really such a delight to be able to follow Mandy's really wonderful presentation. Such a fantastic comprehensive framing of the issues that we confront as we teach social innovation and also practice social innovation alongside our students. So I'm happy to be able to share some experiences from my side of the world, not too far away from Mandy, actually. So just bear with me as I share my screen here. Okay, so I'm here to follow in the conversation around teaching adaptive strategies versus solving technical problems in the context of social innovation education. And so I'm going to talk to you, really share with you an example from my experience as an educator, building resilience through social innovation education, which just happened this past fall. So this is an experience that's hot off the presses, and I'll look forward to talking with you more about that. So a little bit about my background. I'm currently a faculty member at the McGuire Center for Entrepreneurship, and I've also been serving as the interim director over this period of the pandemic, really, which has been an adaptive challenge professionally for me as well. But I have a really interdisciplinary background spanning political science, international development, environmental policy, and also public health. So you can see from some of the pictures I provided here a bit more about my work. I do research with farmer cooperative networks. And so that's a picture of a group that I had the opportunity to work with in Guatemala. And then as an educator, I get to work with student teams as they work on innovation challenges. And so this is one of my teams. Sorry, I've got some dogs back here. This is one of my teams called Avocado Jones that won a competition for their idea on how to address food waste in the avocado industry in Mexico. And then to the far right, I've done work as a social entrepreneur myself as the co-founder of a food literacy and cooking education nonprofit called the Cookbook Project. So a little bit more about me for your own information, and I think it'll probably help frame some of my perspectives moving forward in the presentation. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is really about, again, this experience that I had as a social innovation educator, much like many of you who are here presenting today. This experience just took place in the fall, so I'm going to share with you more about the class itself so you can have a sense of how the class is framed and rooted, what the context of the class is, who some of the students are. I'm going to share with you more about the community partners so you have an understanding of how our experience as learners overlaid onto their experience as community-based practitioners. And then I'm going to talk about our class partnership project and the challenges and the opportunities that we confronted there. And I think there were some really wonderful learning opportunities that I'm sure line up to some of what Mandy shared in her presentation also. So a little bit more about the class. This class is cross-listed in entrepreneurship and also management. So it's technically housed at the business school at the University of Arizona, which is the Eller College of Management. It's a kind of mid-level course that usually attracts students in their sophomore and junior year, although we do get some seniors as well. And what's really fascinating about this course is that it's a part of a social innovation certificate program that the McGuire Center runs that reaches not just the business school population, but also an interdisciplinary student population. And so we have students who are finance majors sitting alongside students who are sociology majors. And I think that makes for really wonderful collaborative group experiences. The course looks at social innovation organizations, and we do that through this lens of the private sector, civil society organizations, and also the public sector. And so our guiding course definition for social innovation, which is one that many of you might use as well, is from the Stanford Center for Social Innovation. And this is how the definition goes. Social innovation is the process of developing and deploying effective solutions to challenging and often systemic social and environmental issues in support of social progress. Social innovation is not the prerogative or privilege of any organizational form or legal structure. And so I think this is an especially relevant definition because, like I was describing before, the students who are attracted to this class come from a variety of backgrounds. We have, management students alongside anthropology students. And so in that way, I think framing social innovation in the context of these three overlapping sectors as a more inclusive space that's not just the purview of nonprofit organizations or civil society organizations, but that it also includes businesses and public sector organizations as well. And so this past fall was one for the books, that's for sure. All of us, alongside our students, were confronting multi-layered challenges that the pandemic brought to us in our work, in our personal lives. So many different layers of really adaptive challenges came our way. And so over the summer, as I was thinking about how to create a relevant class environment for the students, given this adaptive challenge that we were all confronting, I figured that it was most important to bring something really relevant to the table in the fall, knowing that students would already be really preoccupied with everything that was happening around them. And, feeling and understanding that students would want to be focused on something incredibly relevant. And so I decided to partner the class. Every semester we partner with a different organization. And so this particular semester, we partnered with an organization in Arizona called Local First, and they're really focused on supporting the small business network across the state. And they do this through a number of different programs, but one of their programs, which has won a lot of national awards, is called the ScaleUp Program for Small Business Sustainability. And so what's really interesting about this program is that it's a multi-week program that businesses enroll in to essentially adopt more sustainable practices and to set sustainability goals for their business related to both their internal and also their external operations. And so this presented a really unique opportunity for students in their student groups in our course to actually both apprentice with, learn from, and then consult alongside these businesses who are in the middle of grappling with a global pandemic and trying to integrate sustainability practices into their work. So it really provided, again, a wonderful learning experience, both for the students and also a fantastic opportunity for the businesses who had already signed up to go through the ScaleUp program with Local First. So just to give you a little more detail about what the program looks like from the participant perspective. So from the perspective of the business going through the ScaleUp program, they have 6 weeks of content in which they're actively thinking about how they're going to retrofit their business practices to become more sustainable. And ScaleUp really uses a broad definition of sustainability. So not just looking at environmental sustainability, but also looking at resiliency and what that means for people and also the environment, and then also economic resiliency as well. So this kind of three-part model, which I'm sure many of you have heard before, of people, planet, and profit. How can businesses achieve sustainability in those 3 points? And this is also something that we really focus on in the context of the course on social innovation organizations. So it really aligned well with the educational goals of the class. And then here's just a little more detail. This is a valuation table that the program uses to measure business baseline measurements over their goals for environmental sustainability. And so we had quite a unique experience in the fall semester. You never know what businesses are going to end up enrolling in this program, and that was part of the excitement of students participating alongside businesses as they learned from the ScaleUp program. And so we had students that were partnered up with businesses from a whole range of different industries and area of focus. So we had businesses that were focused on issues of housing sustainability, such as Stackhouse and Humanity Hub. We had businesses in the food and beverage industry, such as Arizona Wilderness Brewing Co., nonprofits like the Ishkashita Refugee Network that serve the refugee community in the Tucson area. We had a recycling business that participated, and that was a really fascinating experience for one student group. And then we also had some tech-based businesses like Avantage that participated in the ScaleUp program as well. And so the way it worked was that while we were going through our normal course content, for their group projects, the students were split up into groups based on their industry areas of interest. So they got to select, were they interested in housing? Were they interested in education? And that type of thing. They were paired up with a cohort of other students. So the groups were between 4 to 5 students. And then those students with the team lead coordinated with a business going through the ScaleUp program. And so I'm just going to share with you a kind of an overview of some of the results that came out of one student group that was paired with Arizona Brewing Company. And I should just share that this course, like many other social innovation courses, uses adaptive challenges or adaptive approaches to solving challenges as really the foundation for helping students move through this process. And so we focused for a couple weeks on the entrepreneurial mindset and also human-centered design and that process to undergird how they facilitated their relationship with their paired business. And so Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company had a really fantastic time. As you can imagine, college-age students being paired with a microbrewery was quite exciting. And so they were thrilled, to say the least, but they also really learned a lot. And so they focused in better understanding Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company's, their challenges and also opportunities to become more sustainable around 3 particular areas. One was related to really continuing and enhancing their sustainability journey, which the business had already been on. The second one was in specifically targeting their cocktail program. And again, the undergraduate students were thrilled to be able to focus academic work on creating a more sustainable cocktail program for a brewing company. And then the third component was really around communications. They saw a really great opportunity and really coordinated well with Arizona Wilderness Brewing on how they communicated their sustainability messaging to their community and also their customers. And so just another clip from the students' final report to their business. They collaborated on a weekly basis, attended meetings, and did a lot of interviews with key stakeholders, including within the business itself and also with other supply chain stakeholders. And again, centered around efforts in these 3 areas: marketing and communication, using best practices from other brewing programs. So they came to find out that actually the state of Colorado has its own recommendations for sustainability in the brewing industry, and really helped this Arizona-based brewery adapt some of those best practices to meet the Arizona context. And then they also really helped this particular brewing company connect with local partners who were also engaged in sustainability efforts, such as one sustainable distilling company that was a partner that they didn't even realize was right in their own backyard. So there were some really amazing opportunities that came out of many of the experiences that the groups had. And I think this is one that showcases some of the lessons learned on the student side, and then also the community partner side or the business side in this particular case. And so what were some of the challenges? Well, the majority of students in this particular class were business undergraduate majors. So we did have an interdisciplinary student population, coming from sociology and anthropology and other parts of the university. But the majority were business students. And so for many of them, this was the first time they had even heard of the concept of social innovation. And so from a content area perspective, we were really starting from the ground up. Although I think that's also an opportunity as well. So this required highly specialized content areas that required a deep dive. And so you can imagine, especially in the topic of sustainability, some students were for the very first time learning about internal sustainability operations within business, and also what sustainability means from that broader perspective, looking at people, planet, and profit. It was a challenge to coordinate with the ScaleUp program. So we were sort of like a circus juggling act to a certain extent, where, Local First Arizona was facilitating their ScaleUp program. So that's kind of one level of the experience. We were facilitating our class, and then meeting in the middle where students were connecting with businesses going through the program. So there was a lot happening simultaneously that did present a lot of challenges. But in that way, I think there were so many lessons learned along the way. There were obvious time constraints with the human-centered design and design thinking validation component. Of course, it can always be more beneficial for there to be more time spent in the validation space. And, within the constraints of one semester, unfortunately, we're always limited in the academic format. And then finally, as with any community partnership, I think it's really important to moderate expectations with the community partner. But I will say in this particular case, they were so enthusiastic about the partnership, and as a result, they actually want us to move forward on a continuous basis to partner with them every fall. Some opportunities. So this was, from what I've described to you, a really immersive validation experience for students with local stakeholders. From the reviews we got from the class, there was a really empowering effect for the students of being integrated into a local sustainability effort. So more so than ever, they felt really valued in the process, and they felt like the work they were doing wasn't just contributing to their grade, but that it was actually contributing to helping a sustainability program that was live and rolling out in real time. Which again, I think given how all of our priorities really shifted during the pandemic, really helped keep students inspired during the semester that was already filled with a lot of adaptive challenges. And then finally, this really has presented a wonderful opportunity to continue this coordinated effort with this really excellent community partner. So that's all for my presentation. And really, more than anything, I'm excited to engage with folks who are attending today to learn about your experiences, and happy to answer any questions that you might have in the short term.
Thanks so much, Alyssa, and thanks again to Mandy. If folks have questions, they can post them in the chat. If you'd like to clap or any other kind of celebratory reactions, right? Zoom allows for that too. So lots of ways to communicate our appreciation to our speakers. And of course, in this platform, folks can go ahead and just unmute if they'd like to offer a question or pose an observation. There we go. We see some clapping. Excellent. Are there any questions for our presenters?
Okay, well, thank you so much.